Okay, we've had a number of questions from the audience. I'm going to have there's several iterations of the same question in the audience, and so since I know that it's very important to people, and I will just tell you, it's not exactly. It's honestly now has not put resources into this issue, but it does have to do with economics, the economics that we all face, and that is trade policy. There are a number of people who would like to know how you all stand on tell me, it's the Pacific Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. Yes, and the fast track. So, Congresswoman.
Sure, happy to do that. The reason that it's actually important to our conversation here is because it's about how we protect American jobs and American workers, how we protect our environment, how we preserve the autonomy of our food supply when it comes to engaging in trade relationships. I have actually been part of a coalition for the last several years in the Congress, our caucus, really leading the efforts against fast-tracking any trade deal that would trade away American workers. In fact, I've led the efforts along with over 100 members of Congress who said no to the idea that we would bargain away Buy America principles in trade deals, which would mean that all of the resources that we spend out of our tax dollars would then be subject to competition from 11 or 12 trading nations in a Trans-Pacific Partnership. I've been leading the efforts against that because it's really important to American businesses and American workers. It's enough for Maryland businesses to compete with Virginia or Delaware or California. We should not have to have unequal competition with Vietnam and Burma as well. I have been a very strong proponent of trade deals that are fair trade deals. Unfortunately, there again, you can look at the differences in our records. I support trade deals that have strong worker rights protections, that preserve and protect the environment, that say to companies, whether you're operating here or you're operating in Vietnam, you have to operate under the same rules, because that is a level playing field that American workers can compete under. And I remember NAFTA. I was working at Public Citizen and with TradeWatch at the time that NAFTA passed, when we were promised that service sector jobs would not flow from the United States. And in fact, that is precisely what happened. It happened here in Montgomery County, it happened in Prince George's County, it happened in Maryland. And if you look at Baltimore right now, over this last 20 years, Baltimore has lost over 50,000 jobs that were good manufacturing jobs, where working people had those jobs, they worked in unions, and they made a decent wage. We simply cannot afford that again, and there's no way that we should accept the idea that we would fast track or jam right through the substance of a trade deal that we're not even able to make any changes on. I've been leading that coalition with my colleague Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut, with our union partners, with our environmental partners, with our partners in the women's movement, saying we know that this kind of trade deal would be a bad deal for African American workers and Latino workers. It would be a bad deal for women workers. It would be a bad deal for American workers. No to fast track and no to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And by the way, I've been reading the substance of the TPP, and it would be a bad deal for American workers.
Congressman.
Thank you. First, I just want to say a few words on Social Security. Read the New York Times reporting on this as it happened. I actually led the effort to convince the president not to put the chain CPI proposal in his second budget. At the same time, frankly, I persuaded him not to put a cut in federal employee benefits in his budget. That is on the record. That's why I have a 100% rating from the Alliance for Retired Americans. That's why Max Rickman, who's the president and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, says, once again, seniors, workers with disabilities, including veterans and survivors, can count on Chris Van Hollen to protect their earned Social Security benefits. Now, on trade agreements, my view is, just like any negotiated agreement, you've got to look at each agreement that's negotiated. And you have to ask yourself a question. Does that particular agreement help improve the number of American jobs? Will it increase American jobs? Will it increase American wages? Will it threaten to undermine the consumer protection laws or the environmental protection laws we have here at home or in other countries? And any negotiated agreement, you look at the details to see what side of the bargain you are on. There are times, in my view, where the United States can benefit from trade agreements if we increase our exports and therefore increase American jobs. There are times when the specifics of the agreements and the countries involved in signing that agreement lead you to the opposite conclusion. My conclusion with CAFTA, which was the last multilateral agreement, was that it didn't pass that test. It would hurt American jobs. Are there trade agreements where I look at the bilateral agreement, one negotiation with one country, and conclude that it might actually help exports? Yes. This TPP, though, you have to wait till you see the agreement's not final, but I couldn't agree more that the way it's heading, and unfortunately I don't think there's going to be any change, it's going to be a bad deal because it doesn't deal with currency manipulation in Japan, it doesn't deal with workers' rights in Vietnam, and it has provisions that will allow multilateral corporations, I think, to undermine U.S. law. And so if you've got an agreement that has that many flaws, you should also oppose a process that says we don't get to amend or change that agreement. So I oppose fast track as well.
Thank you both very much. Unfortunately, I know that Representative Edwards had a late-breaking issue of having to get to an airport really quickly. What I would like at this time is to have closing statements from both candidates, and yeah, right. So, Congresswoman, would you start? Yes.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a really spirited conversation, and I'm sure the first of many that will come over the course of this next year. I think that we're at a really critical moment here in Maryland with the transition of a senator who we all know affectionately as Senator Barb, first woman elected on her own into the United States Senate, fighting hard for all Maryland working families. And I think it's really important for us as we approach this decision to make sure that we're going to get somebody in there, again, who's going to fight hard for America's working families. I commit to you that I will do that. I think it really is important, and it does matter the voices are around the table in terms of the kind of conversation that you can have. I think it's really important that when we're talking about equal pay for equal work, that we know that there's a woman sitting at the table who's experienced unequal pay for equal work. I think it's really important in this conversation as we try to figure out how we strengthen all of our communities so that it isn't just some communities that are doing well, but all of our communities are doing well. It isn't just education that works in one place but doesn't work in another place. I think it's important to have somebody around the table like me who understands what that discussion is all about. I think it's also important for Maryland's working families that we be focused like a laser beam on the things that really are going to lift our communities up. Are we going to raise wages? Are we going to say we have to reorient things so that people who work hard every single day and all they want to do is work hard, take care of themselves and their families, and maybe occasionally just have a paid day off in case somebody in their family gets sick. The fact is, this is not a lot to ask. The American people and working people in Maryland are not asking a lot, but it's up to us as senators to deliver that for the American people and to deliver that for Marylanders. And that question gets asked, and it can be answered whether you're on the Eastern Shore, you're on the in the mountains, or you're here in Montgomery County. Just make enough to take care of myself and my children, and what every single parent wants, and that is for their child to do better than their generation did. And today, the answer to that is a negative for so many of our Maryland families because they're slipping farther and farther behind. I want to be in the Senate because I've proven that I can get things done, feeding millions of meals to students here in Maryland who otherwise would have gone without dinner, making sure that we reauthorize the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I did that because in Maryland, 17 of the top 25 companies that are aerospace companies are based here in Maryland. Tens of thousands of jobs. I have fought for working people to have union jobs so that it allows them to make a wage to take care of themselves and their families. And those things I've done as a junior member of the House of Representatives. Imagine, if you will, what I will do for you as Marylanders in the United States Senate. Thank you, and I ask you for your vote.
Congressman.
Thank you. Now, when I think of Senator Mikulski, there are two things that really stand out. One is her view that we are one Maryland, one state, that the health of each part of Maryland depends on the health of every other part of Maryland. And that is no more true than ever with the situation in Baltimore City. And that's why we need somebody who's going to be working hard on the social justice issues, on the economic issues, and has been putting forward concrete plans to get things done when the time was in the state legislature as well as a member of Congress. And I'm also proud that the people who I've worked with over the years and who are interested in getting results are supporting me in this effort. So Jan Gardner, the county executive of Frederick County, is somebody I've worked with. She knows what it means to get things done and work collaboratively with a member of Congress to get things done. I'm also pleased that people like Roz Jones, who's these are people I'm proud to have worked with in getting things done, working together in Maryland. Now, we cannot take this general election for the United States Senate for granted. We just saw what happened in the race for governor. We now have a Republican governor. This is going to be a tough battle. When I first ran for Congress, I won a really tough primary, but I also won a seat that had been held by a Republican for 15 years. So I'm looking forward to working with people across the state. I'm proud not only to have the support of Ike Leggett, the county executive of this county, but also to have the support of Rashern Baker, the county executive of Prince George's County. That happens because people are working together. We're one state. I'm proud to have the support of the mayor of Hagerstown in western Maryland and the mayor of Salisbury on the eastern shore. We need to be working north, south, east, and west to get things done. And I'm proud to have a record in the state legislature, not just of voting the way other Democrats vote, but working to get things done. The Maryland gun law, the legislation that I talked about earlier with respect to gay rights, legislation when it came to voter protection and making sure people could cast provisional ballots. In the Congress, I'm proud to have worked with Speaker Pelosi as the assistant to the Speaker to get a lot of important things done like the Affordable Care Act, and as well as the recovery bill, and also to be the leader in fighting Republican efforts. And also making it possible to team up, pass things like the ABLE Act, pass the childhood cancer legislation, so where we can work together, we can move the country forward as we continue the big fights. So I ask for your support so we can make sure that this is a country that meets now's the work it's done for years. Equal justice, equal opportunity, and equal rights for all people. These are universal values. We need to keep the fight going to make sure America lives up to that promise. Thank you very much for all your support.
I hope everybody can join me in thanking these two tremendous representatives who've done an amazing job. They both have to go to events right away. So please stay in your seats, let them go, and don't accost them now. There'll be plenty of opportunities to talk to them in the days and months to come. We'll have them back, and we've got a year to go for the primary. And 5-minute head start.